Sarah Ferguson's desperate midnight plea has reportedly placed. You have to look at what happened in Austria. From the outside, the luxury surroundings of Salzburg appear almost perfect. Snow-covered mountains, exclusive resorts, privacy, and a level of comfort reserved for the wealthiest. And the financial support that had once helped the York family survive difficult periods was reportedly becoming harder to access. The situation became even more complicated because Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was allegedly no longer different. Instead of a luxurious escape, the resort allegedly felt like a financial trap. Ferguson reportedly explained that the cost of remaining there was becoming impossible to sustain. Her available credit was allegedly reaching its limits, half miles away. Their husbands allegedly had very different opinions about what should happen next. Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi and Jack Brooksbank were reportedly unwilling to allow the financial crisis surrounding Sarah Ferguson and Andrew to spill directly into their own households. According to the claims, both men wanted strict boundaries to create. From their perspective, helping once could quickly become an ongoing obligation. A financial rescue could lead to another request, then another, and eventually the entire situation could become impossible to control. That allegedly made Beatrice and Eugenie even more distressed. They were caught between two completely extremely difficult periods. On the other were their husbands, who were allegedly warning them that becoming financially involved could place their own families at risk. There was no simple answer. If the sisters stepped forward, they could potentially be accused of enabling the very problems that had created the crisis. If they refused, they risked creating an emotional rupture with their mother that might never fully heal. But the serious trouble. Neither option was painless. And while the sisters were allegedly struggling with that decision, tensions inside the palace were reportedly becoming even more intense. The patience of some members of the royal establishment was said to be running dangerously low. Sarah Ferguson was allegedly being described by critics within royal circles as someone who had repeatedly survived controversies that might have destroyed other people. Some reportedly viewed her as an enduring financial problem for the institution. Others allegedly believed that the palace had tolerated too much for too long. The debate was no longer simply about Sarah. It was about the future of the monarchy itself. King Charles reportedly found himself in an especially difficult position. As a father figure within the wider family, he could naturally feel sympathy for relatives facing financial hardship. But as king, he also had to consider public opinion, institutional credibility, and the growing demand for a smaller and more disciplined monarchy. That created a conflict between compassion and responsibility. On one side was the desire to prevent a family crisis from becoming a public disaster. On the other was the fear that another financial rescue could provoke outrage among taxpayers and royal critics. And according to the narrative, there were powerful voices inside the palace pushing for a much harder approach. Queen Camilla, Prince William, and Catherine were reportedly portrayed as favoring a stricter separation between the working monarchy and relatives surrounded by controversy. Their priority was allegedly protecting the institution's future. The argument was straightforward. If the monarchy was going to modernize, it couldn't continually be dragged back into controversies from the past. The York family represented one of the history, and according to the claims, that knowledge could potentially become her greatest bargaining tool. Rumors began circulating that Ferguson could be considering a major tell-all project worth millions of pounds. The alleged figure being discussed was around $2 million. If such a deal were ever pursued, the financial benefit could be significant. But the real concern for the palace would not necessarily be the money, it would be the information. A memoir could reopen itself? That is one of the theories circulating around the situation. Royal biographer Andrew Lowney has reportedly discussed the possibility that Ferguson could use the threat of a public tell-all as a negotiating tool. The theory is that she could seek a long-term financial arrangement from King Charles in exchange for maintaining her silence. If that were true, the king would face an extremely uncomfortable choice. Providing financial support could trigger public anger. Refusing could potentially encourage Ferguson to speak more openly. Either way, the palace would have a problem. And that is why the situation has reportedly developed into a high-stakes waiting game. Everyone